the event for the STEM kit program and how to use it. The presenter is going to be Colonel Kelly. Okay, just before we get started, a few housekeeping. Please visit the Illinois Wing website for more information on today's presenters and presentations. A reminder, the schedule is in Central Time Zone. If you are attending the conference for CAP credit, remember to complete the education survey at the end of the day. Only one survey is needed for the entire day, not per session. There will be 4 lucky attendees selected to receive a door prize and Amazon gift card. You must register to be eligible. Sunday winners will be selected and announced this afternoon at the 3:50 hangar time. To see who yesterday's winner were, visit our website. After the conference, you will be receiving a feedback survey, so please take a few minutes to let us know what you thought of the conference. So the presenter today is our Lieutenant Colonel Connie Kelly. She has been part of Civil Air Patrol since the 60s, and she continues to maintain her membership for 6 decades. She remained very active. She has held positions at the wing, region, and national levels during this time. I'm going to present to all and to ones who know her already, Lieutenant Colonel Connie Kelly.
Thank you, Major Curtis. Well, in addition to being an active CAP member, I'm also an active engineer. I'm a trained engineer. I went to Illinois Institute of Technology, and STEM kits didn't exist as little as 20 years ago. So I'm going to tell you about one of the best parts of the Civil Air Patrol Aerospace Education Program, the STEM kit program. Why STEM kits? The answer's simple. Learning by doing, especially with technical material, has long been regarded the most effective way to not only learn, but retain material for the long term. In college, every technical class I had, whether it was chemistry, physics, electronics, always had hands-on labs to reinforce what the book said. When multiple senses are involved, learning concepts are reinforced. The more senses that are involved, the better the chance the material will be retained. Many hands-on projects are fun, and things that are fun are more easily assimilated. Words can be quite abstract, but actually building something and using it in a number of situations, even trial and error, and noting the reactions to results can solidify information for the long run. So, with the need to make mere words more memorable, enter the STEM kit program. National headquarters will supply STEM kits to AEMs and squadron AEOs upon requests. 1 or more kits, depending on the type, will be supplied upon completion of the request form. Kit availability depends on the demand and sourcing for any given year. Due to demand, kits have been divided into 3 different groups: aviation, space, and cyber. AEMs indicate their classroom area of expertise to determine the primary activity from which to select kits. However, there are some kits like Raspberry Pi and the remote-controlled aircraft that are currently restricted to squadron AEOs. But never fear, an AEM with a class that's interested in one of these restricted kits should contact the closest squadron for some possible joint activities. It may also be possible to arrange for some cadets to address classes of interested students. Well, since CAP is a flying organization, let's start with the aviation kits. The nice thing about the kits is that there's a kit for almost every age group and interest level. And if you have any questions on the kits as we go through them, put them in the, type them in and Major Curtis will get them to me. And it's not necessary to hold questions to the end. The Anglex kit is actually targeted towards our youngest possible students because who doesn't like to play with triangles? The kit contains a series of shapes and protractors coming with activity cards on how to use them to teach cadets and students about angles and to move them toward an exploration of angles, measurements, figures, and how to classify these shapes. The kits provide enough material for a traditionally sized class or group of 8-year-olds, roughly 25 people. Why do we care about angles? Well, if you ever want to be successful in aviation, angles are involved in things like the basic airplane. The angle of incidence is the way the wing is attached to the fuselage. The angle of attack, the angle between the chord line and the relative wind. When you're doing a flight plan, calculating the plan, you're doing our famous wind triangles to figure out how to set your compass heading so that you actually get to the place you want to go. Different angles created from the kit can be used to demonstrate all of these functionalities. You'll get experience calculating angles, learning about degrees, and figuring out some flight planning, destination planning, and measuring the trajectory of an aircraft. As I said, though it's targeted as low as 8-year-olds, your class may be a little advanced for their age, or you may just want to use it as a great visual aid as you're teaching flight planning and other aerodynamic capabilities.
Colonel, can you stop one moment? I had a question.
Sure.
Someone asked, you said angle of attack. Can you elaborate on that, please?
Well, in aviation, the angle of attack is involved in the amount of lift the wing is going to generate. And so by varying your angle of attack, and in a fixed wing airplane, it's by raising and lowering the nose, it determines whether you're going faster or slower, up or down. So the angle of attack is something that you'll get in your basic aerodynamics achievement, and it is critical to flying the airplane. If you don't manage the angle of attack and couple that with the speed of the aircraft, you can go into what's called a stall, which basically means that the airplane stops flying and just starts dropping like a rock. So angle of attack is very important.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome. Okay, bridge building. This is one of my favorites. The bridge building kit contains sufficient material for 24 cadets or students, and they say over age 9, but I've done this with seriously younger students because it's a lot of fun. And bridge building is an important concept, even in aviation, because inside the wings, you've got spars that handle stresses in different ways. So you need to learn how to make a structure that will withstand certain types of pressures. The kit itself comes with 360 pieces of basswood, 20 bottles of glue, instructions, and a teacher's guide. And basically what happens is you glue the pieces together, and if you go into the major competitions, which started here in Chicago at IIT, my alma mater, when you build your bridge, the first thing they're looking at is cosmetics. Is it a pretty bridge? The next thing is, does it handle a load? And they will take the bridge and put on weight to see at what point the bridge just falls apart. And even when I was at IDOT, we had an adult bridge building competition during Engineers Week with the Recca Bridge scheduled for the employee cafeteria, where all the different bridges the employees built were brought in. And first they were judged on looks, and then we wanted to see, are they going to hold anything? Will your bridge let a car drive over it? And a number of weights were placed on the bridge until the bridge collapsed. And some of the bridges collapsed rather spectacularly. And as I said, the bridge competition is one of my favorites, especially when we get to test for endurance. Best part of the thing. And no matter how old you are, it's a great fun thing to work with, and an important concept. You know, we talked earlier a little about geometry, about angles, which is part of geometry, and we actually have a STEM kit which goes into geometry in greater detail. You're going to need to know things like arcs, sines, cosines, specific structures, and the Build and Learn Geometry kit contains all the materials to go through and put these things together. There are 3 different kits: geometric figures, area and perimeter, and volume. And again, these are important things to know. Even in aviation, you need to know the area on the wing. So you know where different pieces of equipment has to be placed. You need to be able to know volume. You need to know the volume of air coming and the air pressure coming in through the pitot tubes. And again, this is a fun activity no matter how old you are. And even though it's recommended for age 8, a lot of times, once you get people to start building, you can do it at a much younger age. As someone who has personally built structures using gumdrops and toothpicks to demonstrate points, it's a fun way to solidify geometric concepts. You know, the associated activity cards really help you to learn the formulas and determine the best way to design and build frames, walls, and other features that meet engineering specifications. They're used in designing aircraft, airports, spaceports even. And 3D geometrical figures determine things like angle of attack. Remember, we talked about that earlier in the flight path. So again, geometry sounds like a daunting bit of that ever-dreaded mathematics. But hey, mathematics can really be a lot of fun. And this is one way to make math a lot of fun. Okay, we talked about angles and geometrics, and that leads us right into our next kit, cross-country navigation. Even with GPS, you need to know how to navigate, because if you lose your GPS or one of the satellites goes out and starts giving you strange readings, you have to be able to navigate. And things like triangles are critical to navigation. So now we take what we learned in the Anglex kit and in the geometric kit, and we apply it to cross-country navigation. Basically, how do we get from point A to point B directly? It's possible to go up and look at a map and fly by. There's a tree here and a bridge here and a silo here, and eventually get to where you want to go. But if somebody cuts down the tree or knocks down a bridge or builds 2 more silos, you're going to be in trouble. So you really need to know how to navigate. And when you're taking your private pilot's exam, there will be questions on navigation, I guarantee you. And when you take your check ride, there will be questions on navigation, guaranteed. The kit helps prepare people for flight planning prior to orientation flights, where you will learn navigation, and other flight experiences. And as I said, it is part of your private pilot's certificate. non-negotiable. Well, now that we know how to plan our flight and how our airplane's going to behave, we get to the flight simulator. Now, unlike some of the flight simulator programs, and a lot of you have Microsoft where you're busy flying your airplane into Willis Tower, this flight simulator really gets you ready for the airplane experience. Not only does it have a working yoke, it has rudder pedals. And by using a computer in conjunction with the yoke and rudder pedals, which have working controls, you can more closely simulate the experience of flying a real airplane. And short of one of the expensive gimbal simulators that the airlines and some of the flight schools use, this is the closest you're going to get to flying a real airplane without actually being in the plane. And it's a great way to prepare so that you're more ready to actually fly a plane. Not only will this spark an interest in aviation, a lot of people who are given opportunities for orientation flight and flight training in CAP, especially the CAP Youth Aviation Initiative, find this extremely helpful. These flight simulators provide realistic piloting experience. This is pertinent for AF Junior ROTC cadets and those in the Junior ROTC Flight Academy. And you can also use this in conjunction with the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association, You Can Fly. Educators, as well as other aviation programs, can also use this to advantage. It's an idea to reach out to educators and CAP squadrons to assist in flight simulator training and to locate pilots willing to speak to the cadets or students and help mentor these groups. And one thing I should mention about the flight simulator, be careful what you load it on. There is software and an entire manual that comes with it, but the software really likes to be on a laptop that doesn't have a lot of other things running on it. So if you have a laptop that you have some critical functions running, you probably don't want to load Flight Simulator on it. But Flight Simulator is a great kit, and it'll provide years and years of activities. And for any cadet or student who's interested in learning how to fly, taking flying lessons, this is a great way to at least get some of your coordination down pat. Now, some of us don't want to actually go up in the airplane, but we want to make sure that the plane that we want to fly a smaller plane and not be in it. The Newbie Drone is a ready-to-fly drone kit that allows you to experience the SUAS activities that we talked about earlier. If you attended Captain Brown's presentation, you learned that drones are becoming more and more a part of CAP, mainly because it's possible to use a drone in an area where it might be a little dangerous to have a ground team go in, or you might have an activity where you need to get a visual on on something in a restricted airspace, and it's a lot easier to fly a drone at under treetop level than it is to get permission to overfly the airspace. So using drones has become a way of life, and this drone kit allows you to put together a simple kit, learn how to fly it, and practice. Unfortunately, the Newbie Drone is limited to squadrons, but AEMs who have students interested in drones should partner up with the nearest Civil Air Patrol unit to investigate how their students can become involved with drones. And I know in certain cases there are activities where cadets will actually go in and work with the students and show them and work with them on flying the drones, especially in a classroom situation where you're not breaking any FAA regulations. But in today's world, drones are becoming not just for delivery, but we're using them for search and rescue. And we're also using them for things like firefighting, because in an area where you've got volunteer firefighters who don't get to train to the level that your 40-hour-a-week professional firefighters do, the people who come after work and go fight a fire, drones can be used to provide visual reference for second story roof activity and keep the firefighters safe. So drones are getting to be a real way of life.
Okay, ma'am, we have a question from First Lieutenant Shannon. One thing she said that I believe she found the cross-country navigation kit difficult to administer on a squadron level. It seems like it's better suited for small groups. They have 40 plus cadets, and very few have any previous flight experience. Do you have any suggestions for a large group approach to using this kit?
Well, if you only have a single set of materials and you don't have any way to duplicate all the materials, and you have cadets who don't have the flight computers and things that they can work with, you might want to consider breaking the cadets based on where they are in the program. And in the part of phase 2 where you're actually talking about navigation, using that kit to supplement that. And then as you cycle cadets through phase 2, cycle them through the program. Or if you have cadets who are going to flight encampment, you might run a special section. But I can see how having 40 people hunched over a single flight computer kind of isn't the best experience. Or you could do something like do a classroom presentation on the material and then break it up into little lab groups and have some of them pencil whipping problems and other people working with the actual hardware, and breaking them up into manageable groups and circuits and cycling them through. But yes, I could appreciate how that would be a problem with the larger group. And congratulations on having 40 cadets.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome. Well, still in aviation, we've got our ready-to-fly quadcopter. And a lot of you are already familiar with quadcopters. You've seen them on TV. You've seen the advertisements. This is a small handheld, ready-to-fly multi-rotor model that can be flown indoors. Indoors is very important because as long as you keep it indoors, you don't have to go to the FAA. And as an aside, I was involved in a drone building project that we did at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And the building there is square-shaped, but it has an interior hallway, square hallway that goes all around the building because they have an atrium on the building, so they have classrooms on both sides of this hallway. And at the end of the building project, we were racing the quadcopters through the hallways around the square, and we didn't have to go and get permission from the FAA to fly them. But we had some great flight experience zipping these things around the quad at UW. So as long as you're indoors, all bets are off. You can fly it indoors as long as you're not going to hit somebody. I definitely recommend if you're flying indoors, you have a range safety officer who makes sure that nobody gets in the way of the copter, because it's very easy for somebody to walk in a room and suddenly have it in the face. You can become an expert in operating a quadcopter in record time. It's fast, powerful, and suitable for racing. Transmitter, prop guards, batteries, USB charger, all are included. And the local Academy of Model Aeronautics offers opportunities for mentorship to learn to fly real remote-controlled airplanes, especially in the takeoff and grow programs. Additional activities can be found in the Model and Remote Control MARC books available to CAP members. This is an important tool in learning about dynamics and forces of flight. Remember we talked earlier about stalling and angle of attack, angle of incidence. Learning to fly this quadcopter can give cadets and students the opportunity to explore the breadth of potential careers and possibly work toward your SUAS ratings. Working with the quadcopter can reinforce principles of aviation required for flight operations. And again, it's a lot of fun. And even though the recommendation is age 12, I personally know some people well under 12 who have been very good at piloting a quadcopter. And if you're an AEM and your class is younger, it doesn't mean you won't get it, but you should write a justification and make sure that they understand that you have some very aviation-oriented students and they're mentally capable of using this material. And so we've worked all the way up through the aviation spectrum into remote-controlled airplanes. So cadets have the benefit of access to the RC airplanes. The kit allows you to build and fly model aircraft, but it's restricted to CAP squadrons only. Again, educators, AEMs, find out where your local squadron is and see if you can partner up for an activity. This program complements the Aerospace Excellence Model Aircraft and Remote Controlled modules developed by the CAP volunteers, and their Mark I and Mark II modules are available online in the AE Downloads and Resources member portal. And even if you're not going to have all the students work with the remote controlled airplane, the module has a lot of great material that will supplement well Phase 2 material. This kit is intended to take advantage of the opportunity to receive a free membership in the Academy of Model Aeronautics. Did I mention it was free? So if your class is working on this or your squadron is working on this, you can apply for membership. And you can also get in touch with local AMA clubs for additional mentorship in flying real remote controlled airplanes and help in the takeoff and grow problems. There are computer compatibility requirements for the real flight simulator. So that's all listed out on the Aerospace Education website. But this is a great way to get yourself into an SUAS rating, learning with the remote controlled airplane, working up into being able to get your CAP certifications. Again, drones are becoming more and more useful, not only in search and rescue and firefighting, in mapping, structural integrity inspections. And I was at a place in the city of Chicago where GE has a lab, and they're using micro drones inside of jet engines to do inspections for cracks rather than take the jet engine apart. It costs a lot of money and it drowns an airplane to take an engine apart, but if they can have a micro drone fly along the blade and take pictures of the blade inside the jet engine, you can look and see if there's any reason to actually pull the engine apart. This will save the airlines, just millions and millions of dollars in maintenance. And it's something that they're actually testing at the M-Hub facility on Chicago Avenue in the city of Chicago. I personally had never thought of using micro drones in a jet engine looking for cracks before, but it's something that's real, it's being done, and it's something that could eventually become part of an airframe and power plant mechanics bailiwick. Snaptricity is our last in the aviation kit. What's more important to aviation than electronics? If you don't know how your electronics work, you're going to have problems in the cockpit. As our airplane are getting more and more electronically oriented, the glass cockpit, knowing how things are set up and how they work becomes very important. And as an electrical engineer, I can tell you this is one of my favorite kits. There are a number of different Snaptricity kits which involve a breadboard, a clear acrylic plate, and pieces with conductive strips in them are snapped on and circuits are built. In the old days, we would either have to do a bunch of soldering, and then they came up with the kits where you had a board with a number of little prongs that stood up and you had to clip wires onto these. This is so much easier to learn the basics of electricity. There's over 75 different projects that you can work on, circuits, switches, how a motor works, lamps. And even if you're not interested in aviation, you might be interested in our communications program, and this is a great way to learn how your radio is working and help you to at least know how to troubleshoot a radio and know how the radio is functioning. Now, this kit, might spark your interest in becoming an electrician, an electrical engineer like me, and/or a scientist. Avionics is one of the most complex systems on a modern airplane, and it's also used in satellites and spacecraft. All types of communication systems in aviation and space include the integration of avionics systems. So if you're looking at a career in avionics or electrical engineering or anything with electronics, you're going to love working with the Snaptricity kit. And this kit can be reconfigured dozens of times. The only part that wears out or has to be replaced are the batteries, which I guarantee you will wear out fast, because once you figure out how the circuits work, you can fly little rotorcraft off of it and develop doorbells and signals, and you will just wear those batteries out playing with the different possibilities. Again, it's a fun kit to use. Okay, from aviation, we move into the space category. And the space category has a lot of really fun kits in it. So since this is space, we'll start out with astronomy. From the beginning to the experienced astronomer, these portable first scope telescopes in the astronomy kit work well with both cadets and students. They're durable and they're accompanied by astronomy lessons and a CD with planetarium software. There's an activity booklet that includes career option information in the AE Downloads and Resources section of the CAP member portal. This gives you an opportunity to begin an interest in space and observational astronomy that can be carried over into family and community stargazing evenings with the assistance of the American Astronomical Society clubs. They have over 7,000 members composed of physicists, mathematicians, etc. and you should be able to find a chapter near you. Both AAS experts and CAP member STEM experts can assist in astronomy-related career mentoring. And I know in the Chicago area, it's kind of hard to see much of anything, but if you drive a half hour or so out to where we don't have the light proliferation, you can see a lot of really great constellations. And one of the things that you'll learn in navigation, the very earliest navigation, was celestial navigation. In other words, navigating by constellations. And this is a great way to learn about those constellations. So should you need to navigate by them in the dark, you can find your way with the constellations.
Ma'am, we have
Yes?
10 minutes before Q&A session.
Okay. Hydraulic engineering is kind of like bridge building on steroids. Not only does it allow you to build a structure, but use simple hydraulic principles to do various activities with the structure. Hydraulics is an important part of a lot of airplanes. Think oil pressure. How do you know whether or not your oil pressure is going to get in trouble? Hydraulics. Avionics. Hydraulics is your second most important system to know after avionics, because not all airplanes are fly-by-wires. You'll learn about pumps, cylinders, fluids, and of course, as we learned yesterday when we learned about Space Lab, everything is more complicated in space, and simple hydraulic machines are easy to build and assemble. And you can use your imagination to design the systems that can be used in space travel as well as living and working in space. And NASA has a number of student-oriented competitions that are targeted toward building similar structures. So this is a great way to get started. What have you heard less about than renewable energy? Renewable energy is something that has been in the news, and it just means that you can keep generating energy from a source that's not going to go away. Things like solar energy. The sun isn't going to go away anytime soon, and basically if the sun goes away, so do we. This kit lets you use solar energy, wind energy, and shows how different types of renewable energy can generate energy for different types of systems. On Earth, wind, solar, and hydropower can be anticipated, but when space is put in the equation, there's a whole new realm of possibilities. Think wind-powered vehicles on Mars. Look at how the solar panels are used to maintain satellites. And we saw yesterday how a solar panel failure almost doomed Skylab to failure almost before it got into orbit. So renewable energy is critical, and knowing how to use it is an important part of any type of future space work. Robotics is a major consideration in today's world. From the robot that puts your car together to the robot that goes into a broken and collapsed building looking for survivors, robotics is part of the world. And we now have robots that are going through and disinfecting hospitals and other places to get rid of the coronavirus. Robots have entered the world of surgery, where you have robots that do surgery when the tolerances are so great that our clumsy fingers can't get in there. So this kit facilitates the exploration of robotics. First, you build the arm, and then you use it. So it's got two different impacts. Plus, you get to keep the kit, so the kit stays, so you get to develop different activities. And using the interface to your computer, you can program away. So you're learning skills that not only can you apply to competitions like First Robotics and Vex Robotics, which carry real cash prizes, by the way, but I digress. But you can prepare yourself for the beginnings of a career because robotics is everywhere. Another fun activity in our space area is model rocketry. Now, those of you in the Chicago area have to be careful because there are a lot of places where you just can't set off a model rocket because there are too many aircraft in the area. But the model rocketry STEM kit provides you all the material to build the rocket and then teaches you how to do the launches. You're going to use mathematics to calculate your payloads. And full disclosure, many, many years ago, back in the dark ages, we used to build rockets and we used to send up photographic plates on our little rockets with the note to send them back, and we'd pay them for the postage and see how far they got. We actually had one that got carried. It must have been picked up in the jet stream and ended up in Peoria. And there's another presentation, I don't remember the schedule, where rocketry was used to launch a balloon from which a paper airplane was launched, and a team of cadets won the Guinness World Records. But rocketry is our pathway to space, and if you watch the launches recently, you know if we're going to go to the moon, we're going to go to Mars, we're going to go anywhere other than somewhere on the face of the earth, we're using a rocket. So it's a great kit to start out with. And yes, even though there are restrictions on where you can launch rockets, there are still a lot of places where you can do it. This weather station is a great way to reinforce the phase 2 modules on weather. Everybody runs into weather, and this weather station will provide you with information on rainfall, barometric pressure, wind, and more. And this particular kit, if you were to go to a store, retails for in the $150 range. And again, this is the gift that keeps on giving as the seasons change, as conditions change, calculating the different materials, calculating the different outcomes, checking rainfall. You can even do things like build a database of information from the weather station and try to make predictions or assumptions about what you've done. So this is a kit that has just hundreds of applications, and it can be a launch pad for a career in weather. All those people who you see doing the weather on the news got their interest in weather peaked somehow. And this is a great way to find out if meteorology is for you. Our last kits are the cyber kits. The Bebot Code and Go mouse is actually designed for younger enthusiasts, and even children in preschool can be taught to program it. By setting up a series of instructions on these, you can make them go down tracks and run. And full disclosure, I've actually seen some teenagers have races with them. So any age group can have a lot of fun. You get the robot and you get information on how to use it and how to structure the classes. And as I said, once you learn how to code it, you can still have a lot of fun building tracks and seeing if you can make it follow the track. So there are a lot of things even older students can do with the Code and Go mouse. And early computer programming really allows you to apply sequencing, estimation, control, problem solving. And who doesn't need computer programming these days? Everything we touch has a computer in it. Which brings us to our next kit, the Raspberry Pi. No, this isn't lunch. This is a single board microcomputer that promotes basic computer science learning. It's a fun, affordable kit, and full disclosure, you will need a TV or a monitor with an HDMI input rather, a cable, a USB keyboard, and a USB mouse. This kit is only available to CAP units, but educators, librarians are strongly encouraged to connect with their local CAP squadron. You can start learning how to program on Raspberry Pi. And full disclosure, I have 3 or 4 of them around here because, by the way, if you fall in love with Raspberry Pi, you can go online and buy a kit in the $30 price range for the basic board, and then depending on how fancy you want to get, if you want an acrylic case, that's another 10. I've got some with cases, some without, but they're really great for doing things, and you can actually learn how to write control programs with it, and they're a great entrance into your basic programming. And for those of you who think you might want to actually get into Cyber Patriot later on, this is a great way to find out if you really like programming or not, because the lessons will teach you the process of how to program in languages like Scratch and Python. And while Scratch isn't commercially used, I do use Python commercially, and you'd be surprised how many places use a Raspberry Pi as a controller for a repetitive process, where the process is boring, dull, which leads itself to errors when done continually, and they don't want to go out and buy a $100,000 robot, but they will put in $100 into a small controller to do the process. But Raspberry Pi, again, is only available to the squadrons, but I would strongly encourage you get with a squadron. And
ma'am, we have one question, and
sure,
because we're running out of time.
Okay, quick question.
Yes, let's see the question that you have here. A person said about their free membership in regards to Academy of Model Aeronautics. Can you elaborate on that?
The information is in the AEM section of on the CAP National Headquarters webpage.
Okay, ma'am, we only have 3 minutes left 2 minutes left for the end of the session.
Okay, our last kit is the Spiro Mini, which again is a robotics kit that teaches you things like control, sequencing. There's tip sheets on how to use it, and again, it's somewhat like the Bebot on steroids. The long-term benefits of these kits is that hands-on activities, especially if you let the class do trial and error, really solidify material. I can tell you that I remember very well the first time I smoked a circuit board, and to this day, I will not make the same mistake. What are your next steps? Order the kit. Who? AEMs, AEOs, unit commanders, assistant AEOs. What? You log in to eServices and place your orders. Then use the time until your kit arrives to plan its use. Do we have any questions?
No, ma'am, that was the last question.
Okay, if you have any questions on the kits or have trouble with any of them, especially for our AEMs that might not have a squadron close by email, I'll have Major Curtis put it in the comments, is ckelly@corecore.com. Real easy. And feel free to reach out to me, And learning by doing is the best way to learn, and especially if you learn by trial and error. I can say that Snaptricity is a lot of fun to do trial and error, because until you get the thing snapped in just right, your little motor won't turn and you can't launch your rotorcraft. And it really solidifies when you're using your hands, you're using your eyes, you're using your ears to hear whether or not certain things are happening. So I appreciate your attention today. And if you have any additional questions on the kits, reach out to me, and enjoy the rest of the presentations.